You know, I love podcasting. I have since 2006, back when you had to use like a Dixie cup with string to make the thing work. And that's why I'm so excited that we recently moved Mysterious Goings On to Anchor FM to record our podcast. I gotta tell you, I don't regret it a bit. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. Not going to lie to you, when I first heard about Anchor, I was a little dubious because I've been doing it the hard way for so long. But I got to tell you, it's very easy. Use a Stripe account. Get sponsors. You're not paying monthly hosting fees. The sound quality is great. The distribution is phenomenal. Friends, download the free Anchor app today if you want to start your own podcast, or go to anchor.fm to get started. Remember, you heard it here first on Mysterious Goings On.
Welcome to Mysterious Goings On. I'm J. Alexander Greenwood, your host. You can call me Alex. I am recording when I probably shouldn't be right now. I am just getting over a very nasty, brutal stomach virus that, well, to say it laid me low is an understatement. Good news is it hit me hard. The worst part lasted probably about 12 hours, and then now, a day and a half after that it's happened, I'm finally almost human again. But anyway, I had some other plans for this chapter of Mysterious Goings On, and I just frankly don't have the energy to do it. And now I'm, of course, 2 or 3 days behind on my day job. So I will beg your indulgence and forgiveness for not talking about what I was going to talk about. But then again, you don't even know what I was going to talk about, so I could probably just erase all of what I just said and say, welcome to Mysterious Goings On. For today's episode, I thought I would give you an episode of a series of audio readings I did, or am doing, called In the Beginning. And it's a series of audio recordings of the prologues or the first chapters from each of my John Pilot mystery series. So, without further ado, today's reading is from fan favorite Pilot's Key, which is book 2 in the series. When I say fan favorite, I'm not kidding. This is the one that is outsold almost, I think it's outsold all the others, but it's critically more acclaimed. It's won an award or two, or it's been nominated for several awards. It's a fan favorite, and it's kind of a drag in some ways because I'm constantly chasing the dragon that was Pilot's Key to, kind of give people back that same flavor that they seem to like the most. Although that's not to say that the books that follow Pilot's Key, Pilot's Ghost, and Pilot 7 are inferior by any means. It's just sometimes you get lucky and you hit a nerve with people. So I'm going to go ahead and just plug in the previously recorded episode. It's about 15 minutes. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you'll come back next week and join me for something a little more brief and a little more put together about writing. You can find me on Twitter at @A_Greenwood. You can find the mothership at pilotscross.com. It's PILATESCROSS.com. Sure would love it if you'd consider buying one of my books. They're on sale at Amazon, iBookstore, Barnes & Noble, Smashwords, wherever books are sold. All right, without further ado, I'll plug in Pilot's Key, In the Beginning. Welcome to In the Beginning, a series of audio recordings of the prologues and or first chapters from each of the John Pilot mystery series, read by the author himself, J. Alexander Greenwood. That's me. Thanks for joining me. Today, we're going to be visiting the sunny beaches and dangerous waters of Key West with a reading from Pilot's Key, the second in the John Pilot mystery series. Also, probably sales-wise, critically reviewed-wise, fan-wise, a favorite in the series, although everybody's got their favorite. This is a particularly fun one for me, and I hope you enjoy a reading of the first couple of chapters of Pilot's Key. So without further ado, Pilot's Key. Chapter 1. A lifeless eyeball stared at Juan from the deck of the sloop. Juan looked away from the dead man's face and focused on securing 3 diving belts to Yves Marchand's nude body. Juan's back ached, and he thought perhaps he had pulled a muscle tussling below decks with the Frenchman. Rising to his feet, he groaned. The sloop deck pitched lightly in the calm waters off Dugan's Key, but he felt sick. Juan vomited, covering the mutely outraged body of Marchand with his partially digested lunch. "Sorry, Jefe," Juan said. He wiped his mouth on his sleeve and positioned himself between the cabin wall and Marchand. He dug his right heel into Marchand's stiff right side and pushed. The body rocked up on its side until the pitching of the deck forced it to fall back. "I'll have to use my hands." He crouched and put one hand on Marchand's hip and another on his shoulder. He again felt the urge to retch when he glanced at the vacuous eye. The left eye was completely red. The socket was crushed by the blows from the ridiculous Trafalgar victory mallet that Juan had removed from the captain's cabin wall just before Marchand came aboard. A seagull called overhead. Juan trembled, inhaled, and pushed. Stiff with rigor mortis, Marchand's body rose up on its side again. "Only about 3 feet to the rail," Juan thought. He grunted and pushed again. Marchand's body slid to the edge of the deck, his right side hanging overboard like a scarecrow and probably lost at sea. The head lolled, the face turned to Juan, and the right eye was impassive. He grunted, scrubbed his face with the crook of his elbow, and dropped onto his butt. He put both feet on Marchand's torso and pushed. The last thing he saw before the body splashed into the water was that horrible, vacant right eye. Juan made the sign of the cross and stumbled below deck. In Marchand's cabin, he found a bottle of cognac and drank a deep swig. The bare spot on the wall where the commemorative mallet had once hung seemed as obvious as a gaping hole in the hull. "En la obscuridad te será un luz para mí, oh protector de mi alma," he said under his breath. He spread out a map of the keys on the captain's table. A comical red X marked a spot north of Dugan's Key, a lifeless sliver of sand about a mile long and a half-mile wide, lurking in obscurity several miles from the fishing and tourist-ridden sea lanes. Even so, it would take some time to find what Marchand had hidden. Time was something he didn't have in abundance. Double-crossing Marchand had given him the upper hand, but now he had the burden of getting a crew together to find what Marchand had buried before the Bahamian did. Juan drank more cognac, then went to the head and washed his hands. Chapter 2. John Pilot peeled the length of flaking skin off his shoulder and held it up to the light. In his wafer-thin skin he saw little interconnected islands, much like the outlines of the submerged coral reefs he had observed from the plane on his descent into Key West. His shoulders stung, for he was unused to the blistering near-equatorial sun of America's southernmost island. He had been careless with the sunscreen when he had taken his first few drunken siestas on the beach at Zachary Taylor National Park. He opened his fingers. The dead skin caught the wind like an errant sail and floated over the second-story deck rail of his friend Trevathan's house. His eyes shifted from the space his skin occupied in midair to the ocean in the distance. Masts of ships in the harbor poked up to deck level like cattails on a riverbank. A biplane hummed overhead, towing a sign that read, "Plane rides, $75." Pilot looked away from the mid-afternoon scene and back at the laptop computer on the desk. The cursor blinked, resting at the end of the same paragraph he had rewritten 8 times. He removed his new reading glasses. He had capitulated to that symptom of growing older when he realized he couldn't read the computer screen without getting a headache from squinting, and pinched the bridge of his nose, squeezing hard to rid himself of the hangover. He groaned and opened his eyes comically wide, as if he was willing them to pop out of their sockets in an effort to wake up and focus on the task. The task. He winced as if he had crunched ice on an abscessed tooth. The task at hand involved reliving the most traumatic events of his life, unless you include his divorce from Samantha. No, he reconsidered, nearly getting killed after stumbling into a 50-year-old mystery in which he ended up killing a man in self-defense was more traumatic than Sam walking out. Just more traumatic, though. The task. It also involved a deadline and a hefty advance he would have to return if he didn't turn in the book on time. Pilot couldn't believe he had been commissioned to write a book about the murders, intrigue, and bizarre happenings at the bucolic little Midwestern college town of Cross. Nevertheless, who was he to look the proverbial gift horse in the mouth? He had battled the machinations of the turgid Jack Lindstrom and won. He had beaten the life-size chess game of manipulative sociopath Derek Krall. He had brought a friend to his senses and to justice. He had earned the respect and help of his boss, Trevathan. In fact, He was staying in Trevathan's house, and the old man would meet him there for fishing and a little decompression time in just a few weeks. Pilate had also put his doppelganger, the caustic alter ego Simon, in a bottle. A medicine bottle. At that point, the taunting imaginary friend had disappeared into the ether. And then there was Kate, whom he had fallen in love with. Kate was a beautiful single mother, and for years she had managed to keep her heart out of sight. Back in Cross Township, Pilate literally wouldn't have survived without her. More important than her beauty and toughness, though, was her deep understanding of him. And being understanding is key when it comes to loving John Pilate. Key, as in Key West, the place Pilate chose to write the book about the mystery of Cross College. He had been there only once before with his ex-wife Samantha, and when they kipped in Key West for a few days before they married, poor as church mice, they ate sparingly to leave room in their meager budget for alcohol and nights on the town. They stayed in a retro-looking motel called the Blue Marlin. Pilate loved Key West. He devoured the seedy, shop-worn mysteriousness of the structures. He adored the curious mixture of New Orleans, Miami Beach, and Savannah. The locals were stories unto themselves. Most were refugees, running from something that haunted them until there was no land left. When their flight ended at the southernmost tip of the United States, the only way they could continue would have been to swim in the ocean or a bottle. Pilate wondered if he was there to write a book in peace, or if he, too, was running to end of the land, escaping the ghost that haunted him. Shit, ghosts. Hell with ghosts. I have Kate. Like some kind of love-stricken teenage girl with an empty journal page beckoning her, Pilate had written a pathetic list of pros and cons about Kate. Kate wants to be with me. Pro. She wants to make love with me. Pro. And share her life and home. Pro. Kate also wants to get married. Predictably, con. He needed time to think, he told her, to write the book, to get his head together and gain perspective. Though the shotgun wounds from his battle with Ollie Ollison had mostly healed, his nerves had not. Sure, Pilate was back on the meds, and his imaginary pal Simon was banished to a padded prison constructed of antidepressants, but it was all happening so damn fast. Too damn fast. It had been only 6 weeks since the events that nearly killed him, and by God, he needed some time to get himself right in the head. His visits with Dr. Sandberg in Key West had been helpful. The good doctor was a friend of Trevathan's, so Pilate managed to get in to see him a few times to discuss his issues. Trevathan figured Pilate had post-traumatic stress disorder, a diagnosis that wasn't entirely out of the question. Pilate fingered a cheap black cigarette lighter and reluctantly lit a Marlboro 25. He planned to quit after the book was finished. He drummed his fingers on the small deck near the keyboard of the laptop and glanced at the full-length mirror on the bathroom door. His bathing suit hung from the bathroom shower head, where he left it to dry after yesterday's beach outing. Glancing at it, Pilate seriously considered chucking the grueling writing for the day in exchange for another refreshing salty dip in the sea. Maybe Smathers Beach this time. He decided the beaches mostly sucked where he was. Rumor had it that the sand on Key West beaches was brought in on barges from the Caribbean. The snorkeling was average and relatively cool this time of year, but compared to Cross College's cold temperatures and occasional bouts of snow, 81 degrees was positively balmy. Yeah, I'll go out to Smathers. It was farther away from the main drag of Duval Street, closer to the airport, and a little less inundated with tourists. He inhaled the cigarette smoke again. The laptop screensaver popped on, a black and white photo of Kate and her daughter Kara, taken a few weeks before he met them. Kate's face smiled, but her eyes didn't. Instead, what lingered there was the loss of her husband. That changed in the weeks after the Cross College incident. Kate's eyes smiled when she traded gazes with Pilate. He'd seen those smiling eyes flicker a week earlier when he told her he needed time alone.
"I understand, John,"
she said.
"It makes sense."
He didn't believe her. When they kissed goodbye, there was something missing. Or, if not missing, at least withdrawn. Yes, Kate had taken her heart back. No stranger to loss, she wouldn't aid and abet more theft. "I'll be back," Pilate said, his hand in hers.
"I know,"
she said, squeezing his hand, then gently taking it away and folding her arms. "Don't be gone too long." Her eyes were dark and wet. He nodded, threw his bag in the car, and drove down the snowy road to the airport 100 miles away. A blast from a boat horn in the harbor snapped him back to today. Pilate hit the space bar, and the photo disappeared from his screen, temporarily taking the memories right along with it. He started a new paragraph. "So I was 4, and a neighbor had caught something in a trap," Pilate said, sitting comfortably back on a leather sofa, so soft he thought he would fall asleep if left unattended. The neighbor had thrown the trap, creature included, outside his fence. Why, I have no idea. "Go on," the man said, his eyes crinkled in amusement and curiosity while he made notes on a small pad atop a lap desk. "Well, I'm 4 years old, right? I don't know shit from Shinola, and as my late grandpa would say, Pilot said, his hand clasped together in his lap. His fingers were tightly intertwined, turning white at the knuckles. So I toddled over to the creature to see see that it's still moving a little, and I can distinctly remember saying, "What a dumb kid am I?" A voice rang in Pilot's head. He swatted it away mentally. "You were saying?" coaxed Dr. Sandberg. "What did the 4-year-old John say?" "Johnny." I said, "Oh, what a cute little bird," Pilot said, looking away from Sandberg and his intimidating psychiatrist notes. Pilot's voice softened. "I thought it was a bird." "In a trap?" "Yes, it was caught in a large varmint trap," Pilot said. "But it wasn't a bird." "No, being the dumb kid I was, I didn't find out till I reached down to pet it," Pilot said. "It bit me hard. It even drew blood, and oh, how I screamed." "Oh my," Sandberg said, putting his pen down on his lap desk. "What was it?" "A rat," Pilot said. "I had put out my little hand to comfort a rat that I thought was a bird, and the thing bit me. My grandpa came out and grabbed the rat and shook it off my hand because its tooth was stuck in my little middle finger." Pilot held up his middle finger to the window in a casually intentional "fuck you" gesture. "What do you think of that experience?" "Well, that wasn't all of it," Pilot said, putting his middle finger down and clasping his sweaty hands together again. "Go on." "Well, they rushed me to the hospital." "Why do they say that, Doc? Rushed. I mean, in an emergency, do you ever saunter to the hospital? Take your time?" Sandberg looked at Pilot indulgently. "You have a point," he smiled. "Well, they get me to the hospital, and my mom and grandpa are freaking out. Well, Mom mostly, but who could blame her? Dad's at work, so they say I have to take rabies shots in the belly." "Ouch," Sandberg said, his eyes widening. "Tell me about it," Pilot said. "I don't remember much about it, and I could be confabulating a lot of this, but the story goes that I passed out as soon as they started the first series. Turns out I had a reaction to the shots. I wasn't able to tolerate the rabies vaccines, so if I indeed had been bitten by a rabid rat, I was going to be a dead little boy." "Terrible," he said. "All because I wanted to comfort an injured creature," Pilot said. "Do you think that's affected the way I view people?" What do you think?" he asked, arching an eyebrow and taking up his pen again. "I think I learned right then and there that when you stick your hand out to help, you're likely going to draw back a bloody sump, so to speak." "Tough lesson to learn at age 4, Sandberg said. "Yeah," Pilot said, his eyes moist. The doctor held up a box of Kleenex. "Here you go." Pilot sniffled and took a couple of tissues. "I don't know why it upsets me so much," he said. "I guess it's because I really haven't talked to anybody about it before." "What upsets you about it?" "I don't know," Pilot said. "Is it because you learned a tough lesson?" Pilot blew his nose and looked at his hands a moment. "I think what bothers me most is thinking about that little boy." "You?" "Right. I mean, here's this sweet little guy. Big brown eyes, a loving and trustworthy kid. And this happens and just ruins it for him. That bothers me," Pilot said. "It's a pretty heavy thing to say this single event changed you completely," he said. "Could it be that it was part of a series of events or incidents that hurt that little boy, and this one is merely the touchstone for those negative things?" "Not sure what you mean," Pilot said, looking up at the doctor's bald head and the collection of autographed baseballs on the shelf behind him. "Touchstone?" "Well, is it legitimate to consider that perhaps you had some stuff in your childhood that caused you to be who you are?" "I thought you were a Jungian." "Mostly, but that doesn't mean I completely rule out childhood trauma. There could be something here," he said. "You tell me you have an imaginary friend who has been around at times of stress in your life. Oh, you tell me he's often negative, though that negativity is a comfort sometimes. You've seen 3 different psychiatrists, and all have said you're not schizophrenic, bipolar, or mentally ill, other than your bouts with clinical depression, and the more routine dysthymia, something you've probably lived with your entire life, even unknowingly." "Simon is no friend of mine," Pilot said. "I'm hurt," Simon said from his perch in Pilot's mind. "Perhaps not a friend, but a constant companion," Sandberg said. "Who do you think he represents?" "A rat." "Simon the rat," he mused for a moment, tapping his pen to his teeth. "Considering your literary ambitions, I would have thought that you would have called him Ben or Willard," Sandberg said. Pilot shrugged. "Simon Templar was the name of an orphan chose." "You consider yourself an orphan?" "I don't know," Pilot said. "In some ways, yes. I don't think I was ever fully part of the family, though I'm not sure why." "All right, let's table that for now. Back to Simon. Perhaps Simon is negative when he speaks to you because you want to keep yourself clean and clear of negative thoughts. Perhaps John Pilot wishes to reclaim that innocent little boy who took the rat's tooth for his trouble. Simon is what you invest your negativity, cynicism, and anger in." I don't know, Pilot said. What does Simon say to that? Sandberg said. How should I know? It's not like I conjure him up at will, at least not consciously. Okay, Sandberg said, looking at the clock. Simon says this is all the most exquisite bullshit he's ever heard. Time up, Pilot said, sitting on the edge of the sofa. For today, Sandberg said. Can you come back next week? We'll see, Pilot said. I have to get this book done. Therapy's a luxury. How long you here? Sandberg said, opening his calendar. A few more weeks, Pilot said. Come back same time next week, he said. I'd like to circle back to what happened to you at Cross College, and perhaps we can talk about your family. Okay, Doc, Pilot said, taking the appointment card. Thanks. That was the first 2 chapters of Pilot's Key here on In the Beginning. I hope you enjoyed them. You can find Pilot's Key wherever ebooks and paperbacks are sold. You can also find them on my website at pilotscross.com, where you can get autographed paperback copies at a really great price. I hope you'll check that out. Don't forget to visit our Facebook community and like it and follow it and comment over at facebook.com/JohnPilotMysteries. Tell a friend about the books if you're interested in them, and don't forget to come back to the Clues blog at pilotscross.com. Until next time, I'm J. Alexander Greenwood. Thank you very, very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Until next time on In the Beginning.
From regular expenses to occasional splurges, there's a lot to buy. Why not get cash back every time you spend? With the PenFed Power Cash Rewards Card, you get cash back on every purchase. That's everywhere, every time you use it. You can even earn a $100 statement credit when you spend $1,500 in the first 90 days. Visit penfed.org/powercash to apply. To receive any advertised product, you must become a member of PenFed, insured by NCUA. It's a great time to get a great deal on a new car when you get approved for an auto loan from PenFed. Our Powered by True Car rates are as low as 1.39% APR on new vehicles. Finance for a longer term to lower your monthly bill. Plus, take up to 60 days to schedule your first payment. Join PenFed and together we'll keep you moving forward. Anyone can apply. Visit penfed.org/auto or call 1-800-247-5626. To receive any advertised product, you must become a member of PenFed, insured by NCUA.